The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Greetings and welcome to the Personal Safety Show. This is Marcus Melnick from Firearm Mentor and Stress to Logic, your host. And today we are going to be talking about when an individual can and cannot use a firearm in self-defense. And I must apologize to my listeners because the first part is not going to be very riveting, but we need it as a foundation to build upon so we know what the legal definitions are. So and we're talking about Illinois law here, according to Illinois compiled statutes 720 ILCS 5/2-6, a dwelling it means a building or portion thereof, a tent, a vehicle, or other enclosed space, which is used or intended for use as human habitation, home, or residence. And what it means is it could be a house, apartment, mobile home, trailer, living quarters. It could be your car if you're actually living in your car. If you're not living in your car, don't say you're living in your car, but it's anywhere you hang your hat. That is a dwelling, anything a human would live in. And an aggressor, according to the law, is an individual who is attempting to committing, or is escaping after the commission of a forcible felony. We'll define forcible felony momentarily. And this aggressor initially provokes the use of force with the intent to use the force to inflict bodily harm, meaning they're there to hurt someone else. So, what is a forcible felony? Well, first of all, a felony is a serious crime that is punishable by 1 year or more in prison. A misdemeanor is a lesser crime, which is punishable by up to 364 days in a local county jail. So now that we know what a felony means, a forcible felony are all of those felonies that possibly could or actually do result in injuries. And they include things like treason, first-degree murder, second-degree murder, predatory criminal sexual assault of a child, aggravated criminal sexual assault, simple criminal sexual assault, robbery, burglary, residential burglary, aggravated arson, kidnapping, aggravated kidnapping, battery, aggravated battery. I take that back. Aggravated battery, resulting in great bodily harm or permanent disability or disfigurement, or any other felony which involves the use or threat of physical force or violence against another person. With that said, I'd love to tell everyone the difference between burglary and robbery. Burglary is a property crime, meaning a house was broken into and something was taken. That is burglary. There's also burglary to a vehicle. Robbery is a personal crime. It is a stick 'em up. The bad guy is actually facing the victim, and that then theft occurs. So one, there's a potential for violence, and one there is not because the homeowner is not home. So a lot of people will say to me, my house was robbed. No, your house was burglarized. Property cannot be robbed. Okay, so with that said, when can you shoot another individual or an animal? Well, according to section 7.1 of 720 ILCS 5/7, use of force in defense of a person is justified in their use of force against someone else when he or she reasonably believes that such conduct is necessary to defend themselves or another against the bad guy's imminent use of unlawful force. They're also justified in the use of force intended to cause death or great bodily harm only if they reasonably believe that such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself or another, or the commission of a forcible felony. So I just paraphrased and kind of read what the law says, but let's break it down and see what this means. So the aggressor has to be putting another human being in danger. What that means is if your dog is outside, and I love my dog. My dog is a member of the family. I totally get it. I'm an animal lover. But if that dog is getting attacked by another animal, a coyote, another dog, something like that, you cannot shoot the aggressive attacker because a dog, according to Illinois law, is considered property. There is one exception where you can use force to defend property, and I'll get into that shortly. But it's only for people. Also, you do not have to be injured to respond. You can about to be injured. You can be about to be injured, meaning someone is walking up to you with a tire iron. They've taken their knife out. It's in an aggressive stance. They're not like cleaning their fingernails with it. And that is an indicator that they are going to hurt you. Now, if you take out your firearm, there's different levels of use of force for a concealed carry holder. One level is to use verbal judo. Hey, look, I don't want any trouble. Back off. I'll leave you alone. You leave me alone. That's one level. The next level is actually reaching for a firearm, and the aggressor sees it. That may stop the fight. That may stop the fight. Or it possibly could be you taking the firearm out of your holster. That would stop the fight. Pointing it in a low ready position, that might stop the fight. Pointing it at the bad guy, and then finally firing. So if any of these steps occur and the fight stops, the bad guy leaves, the bad guy gives up, the bad guy falls over, whatever it is, that's when the fight stops. We are not samurais as concealed carry permit holders. Doesn't mean when you unsheath your sword, you have to draw blood. If you unsheath or unholster your gun, doesn't mean you have to shoot. As a matter of fact, I was just in a class this past weekend, and I was explaining how it's actually more difficult to not shoot someone than to shoot someone. For example, we go to the shooting range to practice shooting. We don't go to the shooting range to practice not shooting. So we have to actually be in control of our minds, in control of our faculties. One of my previous professional mentors was a police officer, and he went to a call where there was a woman with a gun. She had discharged it into the ground. And he pulled up. His gun was out, but he didn't shoot her because her gun was pointed down. Her gun was not endangering anyone, and he got her to drop the gun, and ultimately she got arrested. This was following a domestic dispute. And all of his brothers and sisters, although I think it was all brothers at the time, said, "Why didn't you shoot? You could have shot." And that lesson to me as a teenager being mentored was that, wow, it's harder to not shoot someone. So I like to pass on that information to everyone here. So, use of force has to be necessary to defend yourself or another person. If you look at the law, property is not mentioned. Now, there's an exception which I will get to shortly. Your actions has to be necessary to prevent imminent or immediate death or great bodily harm. So everybody knows what death is. Death is permanent. Dead is dead. There is no coming back unless you are one religious figure. And that was a little bit of humor there. But what is great bodily harm? And when I ask this in classes, I often get an answer of examples. Broken bones, stitches, internal injuries, that type of thing. Well, let me give you my definition of great bodily harm. And once again, I'm giving the caveat, I am not an attorney. So this is not legal advice. You would have to confirm this with an attorney. However, it's good advice. I am a court-recognized expert witness, and this has been used on the stand. Great bodily harm is anything that will put you in an emergency room for a physical injury. And that includes all of the examples I've been given. It includes criminal sexual assault. It includes needing stitches, broken bones, internal injuries, concussions. But I'm offended or I'm scared is not a reason to shoot someone. Just because somebody is scared, I get scared. I'm a human being. And let me tell you, what this means is if you are under attack or about to be under attack, and that attack could hospitalize or kill you or another person, you may be justified in using force. Now, we always want to use the least amount of force possible to get a situation resolved. The least amount of force possible would be leaving. The second least amount possible would be using your words, like we say to little children. Use your words. All you have to do is communicate. And when you communicate, it's got to be very short, curt, loud, commanding voice. So don't say, "Sir, will you please put your firearm down so that I can make a citizen's arrest?" And if you ever saw Gomer Pyle, that was one of his lines. So that's not the way to talk to somebody. Get down. Get back. Stop. Another good one is, don't hurt me. Why am I saying don't hurt me? Well, you're playing the role of a victim. Now, somebody or a ring camera or somewhere is going to be videoing you. If you're saying, don't hurt me, that goes to court later. Look, I didn't want to get hurt. So that's what you have to do as far as using verbal words. Now, you're going to be in an adrenaline dump. They may be in an adrenaline dump. And part of that is auditory exclusion, meaning you can't hear everything that's going on. There are people that have been on emergency scenes and they have been they call it in shock. So you've got a paramedic, you've got a police officer. I don't mean violently, but I mean like hands on the person's shoulder, kind of shaking them a little bit. Are you okay? Are you okay? This happens because there's cognitive blocks on non-survival information. So someone asking you, are you okay, if you're physically okay and you're just mentally kind of messed up, is not a survival thing. So if you remember the movie Captain Phillips, after he gets rescued from the Somali pirates, he gets taken to a ship's sickbay and he's treated. And so you've got the medic, I don't know if she was a physician or a medic or corpsman, giving him an exam, and she's asking him certain things. Is this your blood? It's not my blood, not all of it. And there are times in that scene where he has to have her repeat herself because he has auditory exclusion. Same thing at the end of the movie with Mark Wahlberg, Deepwater Horizon. He's rescued from the oil platform. He goes into the hotel. When he's in the hotel, you hear the sounds are kind of distant, and that's exactly what's going on, is that the person has auditory exclusion. So before we get into that big exception, I'm hoping you stay tuned for it, let's talk about lawsuits. Can you be sued for using your firearm? Well, according to the law, 720 ILCS 5/7.1 continued, in no case shall any act involving the use of force that is justified give rise to any claim or liability brought on or on behalf of the person acting within the definition of aggressor, which we had already defined, set forth in the previous section, or the estate, spouse, or family member of such person against the person or estate of the person using such justified force, unless the force involves willful or wanton misconduct. So, can you be sued for using your firearm? Yes. Can you be sued for rightfully using your firearm? Yes, but the law prevents it. All it takes is $100 or $200 to go down to the courthouse to file a lawsuit. So what are they looking for? Well, they're looking for a settlement. They're looking for your money. It costs approximately $50,000 to retain a criminal defense attorney or a defense attorney in a civil case. With that said, the family member of the bad guy is probably looking for about $20,000 What's good for you? Pay the 20 or pay the 50? Well, pay the 20. And that's why I always recommend a concealed carry insurance plan. Now, if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, I'll have a link to that plan or to how to get a hold of me for that plan. Okay. So the plan that I use is Right to Bear. That is what I have found is best for me. It does cover people who carry firearms for a living, so security, armored car, police officer, and it gives them an attorney, no out-of-pocket cost, up to and including Supreme Court, both state and federal appeals, as well as civil. There's no caps, no limits. If you're interested in learning more about that, please reach out to me via my electronic business card, which is marcusmelnick.com. That's MARCUS Melnick, MELNICK.com. So you've been waiting to hear about that exception. Well, let me tell you what that exception is. So you cannot use your firearm to defend property except 720 ILCS 5/7-2, use of force in defense of a dwelling. Section A says a person is justified in use of force against another when and to the extent that he reasonably believes such conduct is necessary to prevent or terminate the other's unlawful entry into or attack upon a dwelling. However, he is justified in the use of force which is intended or likely to cause death or great bodily harm only if, number one, entry is made or attempted in a violent, riotous, or tumultuous manner, and that person reasonably believes that such force is necessary to prevent an assault upon or offer of personal violence to him or another in the dwelling, or they reasonably believe that such force is necessary to prevent the commission of a felony in a dwelling. So burglary is a felony. I wouldn't necessarily shoot someone if they snuck into my house. But when we talk about entry being made in a violent, riotous, or tumultuous manner, we're talking about, again, not a legal opinion. This is a Marcus opinion. We're talking about breaking something to get into your home, whether that means kicking a front door down, breaking a window, going through a glass rear sliding door. Something breaks, that's showing you that the offender or the invader or the aggressor has intent to harm you, and you are justified in using force. So just because somebody is in your house does not mean you can shoot them in Illinois. Now, other states have other laws. In Texas, they're on your property. You can do a little bit more with your firearm than in Illinois. But I'm going to share a story with everyone. This is a long time ago. It was a couple weeks before Thanksgiving, and I have an elderly relative who does not drive at night, and I live 3 blocks away from her. So she called me up a couple weeks before Thanksgiving this one year, and she asked me, she said, "Hey, Marcus, I don't drive at night. Would you mind picking me up and giving me a ride to and from Thanksgiving dinner?" Of course, no problem. You know, I'm a good deed doer. And it was not out of my way. So here I go. It's 3 blocks from my house. I tell her, "Hey, look, you know, I know where you live. I know what street you're on, but I forgot the house number," because I hadn't been there in a year when she previously asked me to pick her up. And, you know, it's dark out, so it looks different in the dark. So she gives me the house number, and Thanksgiving, 5 o'clock, dark out, because that's what winter is in Chicago. I pull up. She told me the garage door will be open. Just come on in. So I pull up on the street. I check the house number. It is correct. And the garage door is open. So I walk through the garage. It's attached garage to the house. The only thing that I found that was out of the ordinary was there were a couple of area rugs in odd places in the garage. So I could see putting an area rug or something under a car if it has leaky oil. That's what we did when I was a kid. You know, of course, cars weren't as good as they are now. But that's what we did. We had a little something to catch the oil. And usually it was a plastic tarp with something absorbent on top of it, a towel, a beat up area rug, that type of thing. So these were in odd places, like not where you would think an oil leak would be, but whatever. So I go up to the door and I knock. No answer. And I can hear activity on the other side of the door. So I knock a little harder. Knock. And again, I can hear activity. No one's coming to the door. So I take the bottom of my fist and I pound on the door, and this was loud. Again, no answer. Well, she said come in. Maybe she had hearing aids, or maybe she had hearing issues. Maybe she was in the bathroom. I don't know. So I open the door to this attached garage. It swings into the kitchen. I walk in the house, and standing in front of me, now, before I tell you what was standing in front of me, you have to understand, I'm Caucasian. And my whole family, that's blood, is Caucasian, although we do have extended family members who are Asian, South American, Hispanic. We have a very diverse family that has been married into, but I am white. So I opened the door, and standing in front of me was an Indian woman, and I know she was Indian because she had a sari on, which is Indian garb. She looked at me, and I looked at her, and she said, "Oh my goodness!" She scared the crap out of me, and I scared the crap out of her. So I immediately apologized. I said, "I am so sorry. I'm picking up my cousin for Thanksgiving dinner, and obviously I'm in the wrong house. Please accept my apologies. I'm leaving. Your garage door is open, by the way." So I left. And the joke with the family became, "Marcus is breaking and entering. Marcus the burglar." Obviously I had no malintent of scaring anyone for sure and not taking anyone's property. So I was on the wrong street. I was one street over. It was dark. Marcus messed up. But it made a very funny story afterwards, because Marcus the burglar, here I am in law enforcement, and I walked into someone else's home just because I was there did not give this woman the right to shoot me. Similarly, I grew up in Skokie, and a lot of the houses in Skokie, they're row houses. They're built by the same builder, and they all look very, very similar. There's some design differences. But as a kid growing up, our front door, our back door would be open. And every once in a while, our neighbors would have visitors. And when I say visitors, I mean child visitors. It's the cousins, it's the friends of the children that live in the neighborhood. And every so often, we would get a child in our living room just walking right into the house, confused look on their face, looking around saying, I'm in the wrong house. Because they had to go to the house next door or across the street or another house that looked exactly like ours. That doesn't give us the right to shoot someone. Also, if someone's in your house and you just bought that 70-inch, $4,000 TV, and they're very carefully with the screwdriver trying to take it down to walk out with it, that is theft. You are not okay to shoot somebody taking your property. Now, you can confront them, but then you're putting yourself at risk. And a lot of people recently, in the last couple of weeks, have done that. There's one story of a concealed carry holder, had a Dodge Durango, and it was stolen. And somehow he tracked it down to a grocery store on 87th, south side of Chicago, went up to the car, and I'm totally paraphrasing this based upon what I've heard on the media, and the kids, they were teenagers who stole the car, also had firearms and started shooting at this owner of the vehicle, and then there was a shootout back and forth. I'm not sure if the teens got arrested or got caught, but if you have something stolen and it's got an air tag on it, that's wonderful. Let the police know where it is. Let the police do their jobs. Taking the law into your own hands is never a good idea, particularly when you have the resource of the police. Now, police aren't going to do anything about it. Oh, you have a decision to make. I don't know. I mean, I have insurance. Let them have whatever I have. It's all good. So in any event, If there's something in progress, you don't have an escape route, then you may be justified in using your firearm if the other person is using force or threatening to use force that would result in death or great bodily harm. Some states call it grave bodily harm. In Illinois, it is great bodily harm. And Marcus's definition of great bodily harm is enough force, enough injury to land a human being in the hospital for a physical injury. Now, a Band-Aid, a paper cut is not what we're talking about. We're talking about a serious injury that requires emergency room intervention. With that said, we'll be back shortly with more information. Thank you.
I want my listeners to know that this is my dream, teaching people about safety. If it weren't for you, if it weren't for my listeners, I couldn't live my dream. So on behalf of my family and myself, I want to thank each and every one of you for allowing me to live my dream. And I also want to continue to live my dream, and I'm excited to continue to spread the word of safety. Recently, I began a new service as a conference keynote speaker. So if anyone would like for me to speak at future events, or if anyone knows of an introduction or would like to discuss how we can work with one another, I'd love to do just that. The keynote speaking website is www.stress2logic.com. That is STRESS2logic.com. If you're aware of any conference speaking engagements where you'd like to have me speak, I'd love an introduction. You can always share my electronic business card, which is Marcus Melnick, MarcusMelnick.com. Now, back to the show. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.